tensing up. Give me your leg. It's a prosthetic. You're breaking it.
The linoleum floor of the cafe was scuffed and smelled faintly of bleach and roasted espresso. It was the kind of floor you walk across without noticing, the kind of floor where people tap their feet while waiting for a morning latte. But for Marcus Holloway, that floor became the center of his universe for 14 agonizing minutes. It was the surface his cheek was pressed against. It was the cold reality that met him when the life he had rebuilt, piece by painful piece, was kicked out from under him. What happened on that Tuesday morning in November wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't a routine stop gone wrong. It was a collision between a man seeking peace and a system primed for violence. It was a moment captured by the unblinking eye of a smartphone lens, a moment that would shatter a police officer's career, humiliate a city administration, and vindicate a veteran who had already given more to his country than his country had ever given back. Before we walk through the doors of the daily grind and witness the event that sparked a national firestorm, I want to ask you something. We often hear about justice in the news, but what does justice actually look like when the cameras aren't rolling? If you're someone who believes that the truth deserves to be heard, no matter how uncomfortable it gets, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We dig deep into the stories that others only skim, and we're glad to have you with us. To understand the magnitude of the violation, you have to understand the man sitting in the window seat. Marcus Holloway was 41 years old, a man built from resilience and scar tissue. He had spent his 20s in the deserts of the Middle East, a staff sergeant in the Army who specialized in communications. He was the guy who kept the lines open when the world was exploding. But war collects attacks on the body, and Marcus had paid his share in Kandahar. An IED, a roadside bomb buried in the dust, had torn through his Humvee. The blast took his lower right leg. It shattered 3 vertebrae in his lumbar spine. It took him 2 years to learn how to walk again, balancing on a carbon fiber prosthetic and relying on a sturdy weighted cane to keep the world upright. Marcus didn't complain. That wasn't his nature. He had reinvented himself as a freelance cybersecurity analyst. He lived a quiet life in a brick apartment building in the North Heights district. He valued order, he valued silence, and most of all, he valued his routine. Routine is medicine for trauma. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning at exactly 8 a.m., Marcus left his apartment. He walked 6 blocks, a painful but necessary physical therapy ritual, to the Daily Grind, a local coffee spot known for its exposed brick walls and quiet atmosphere. The staff knew him. They knew he drank a dark roast, black. They knew he needed the table by the window because, like many combat veterans, Marcus couldn't relax if he couldn't see the exit. He needed to know what was coming. On this particular Tuesday, the only thing coming should have been rain. It was a gray, drizzly morning in the city. Marcus had arrived at 8:15 a.m., nodded to the barista, a college student named Chloe, and taken his seat. He opened his laptop, a sleek silver machine, and began reviewing code for a client. His cane, a black tactical-grade support device, was leaned carefully against the windowsill next to him. It was a scene of perfect domestic peace. A man, a coffee, a job. 6 blocks away, Officer Kyle Rourke was beginning his shift. Rourke was 34, a patrol officer with 7 years on the force. In the locker room, he was known as a producer, the kind of cop who brought in numbers, tickets, stops, arrests. But in the hushed conversations of the Internal Affairs Bureau, Rourke was known as a liability. His file was a patchwork of red flags, aggressive language, escalation of minor disputes, profiling. But in a department stretched thin, with a union that fought every reprimand, Rourke stayed on the street. He was a hammer in search of a nail, patrolling a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying, where old residents and new money rubbed shoulders in uncomfortable ways. At 8:22 a.m., a call came into dispatch. It didn't come from the coffee shop. It came from the second-floor window of an apartment building across the street. Brenda Miller was a woman who spent her retirement watching the world through the slats of her blinds. To Brenda, the neighborhood wasn't changing. It was under siege. She kept a notebook by her window. She logged license plates. She logged faces. And on this morning, she saw a black man in a heavy coat walking with a large black object. She didn't see a cane. She saw a threat. "There's a man," Brenda told the 911 operator, her voice trembling with a manufactured fear. "He's walking into the coffee shop. He has a weapon. It looks like a rifle case or a baton. He's acting surreptitious." The dispatcher, overworked and fielding 3 other calls, didn't press for details. The code went out. Suspicious person. Possible weapon. 415 in progress at the daily grind. Officer Rourke heard the call. He didn't hear suspicious person. He heard gunman. He flipped his lights on. He hit the accelerator. The adrenaline dump hit his system, narrowing his vision, shutting down the part of the brain that asks questions and activating the part that pulls triggers. He pulled up to the curb at 8:26 a.m. He didn't park legally. He slewed the cruiser across 2 spots, blocking the entrance. He stepped out. He didn't adjust his hat. He rested his hand on his holster. Inside the shop, Sarah Jenkins, a 23-year-old nursing student, looked up from her anatomy textbook. She was sitting 2 tables away from Marcus. She saw the cruiser. She saw the officer's face. It wasn't the face of someone coming to help. It was the face of someone coming to conquer. Instinct is a funny thing. Sarah didn't know why, but she slid her phone out from under her notebook. She opened the camera app. She hit record. She propped it against her sugar shaker, the lens pointed directly at Marcus Holloway's table. Officer Rourke burst through the door. The little bell above the frame jingled, a cheerful sound that died instantly in the sudden silence. "You, in the window!" Rourke bellowed. Marcus looked up. He was mid-sip. He blinked, his brain trying to bridge the gap between his coding work and the shouting police officer. "Excuse me," Marcus said. His voice was deep, calm, the voice of a man who had negotiated with tribal elders in war zones. "Hands! Let me see your hands!" Rourke moved forward, kicking a chair out of his way. The coffee shop froze. The barista stopped the espresso machine. The silence was absolute, broken only by the heavy breathing of the officer. "Officer, I'm just drinking my coffee," Marcus said, slowly lifting his hands, palms open. He knew the drill. No sudden movements. Telegraph, everything. "I'm a veteran. I work here every Tuesday. Is there a problem?" "Stand up." Rourke was 10 feet away now, his hand tightening on his service weapon. "Stand up and step away from the bag." "I don't have a bag," Marcus said, confusion knitting his brow. "I have a laptop, and that's my cane." He nodded slightly toward the windowsill. To Officer Rourke, that nod was a threat. He followed Marcus's gaze and saw the black object. In his mind, primed by the dispatch call, it wasn't a medical device. It was a weapon. "Don't you reach for it!" Rourke screamed. He drew his gun. The sight of the firearm changed everything. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. A mother in the back corner pulled her child under the table. "It's a cane," Sarah Jenkins shouted from her table, her voice shaking but loud. "It's just a walking stick." Rourke spun toward her for a split second. "Stay back. Do not interfere." He turned back to Marcus. "Get on the ground, face down, now!" Marcus looked at the dirty floor. He looked at the gun. He felt the phantom pain in the leg that wasn't there, and the very real fire in the spine that held him together. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice steady but strained, "I physically cannot do that. I am an amputee. My leg is prosthetic. If I get on the ground, I can't get back up. I am not resisting you. I am telling you my physical limitations." "I said get on the ground." Rourke didn't hear him. He was in the tunnel. He was waiting for compliance, and anything less than total submission was a threat. He holstered his weapon and lunged. Rourke grabbed Marcus by the lapels of his heavy winter coat. He yanked him forward. The table tipped over. The laptop clattered to the floor. The hot coffee spilled across the linoleum. Marcus groaned as his center of gravity was ripped away. Rourke spun him around, kicking his legs apart. When he kicked the right leg, the metal and plastic one, it didn't give way like flesh. It was stiff. "Stop tensing up," Rourke shouted. "It's a prosthetic," Marcus yelled, the dignity stripped from him. "It's fake. You're breaking it." Rourke slammed Marcus face down onto the floor. He drove his knee into the small of Marcus's back, directly onto the fused vertebrae. The sound Marcus made wasn't a scream. It was a guttural, wet gasp as the air was forced from his lungs and the pain blinded him. 2 backup officers, Officers Mendez and Tate, burst through the door. They saw their colleagues struggling with a large man on the ground. They didn't ask questions. They joined the fray. They grabbed Marcus's arms, wrenching them behind his back, ratcheting the handcuffs so tight the metal bit into the bone. I can't breathe," Marcus wheezed. "My back." Sarah Jenkins was still recording. Her phone captured everything. The spilled coffee. The 3 officers on top of 1 disabled man. The cane lying innocently against the wall, clearly not a rifle, clearly not a weapon. Have you ever witnessed something that you knew was wrong, but you felt powerless to stop it? It's a terrible feeling. Sarah Jenkins felt it, but she didn't stop recording. And that decision is the reason we know the truth today. If you think filming police interactions is a vital right, Hit the like button. Let's show the world that accountability matters. Across the street, on the third floor of a glass-fronted office building, Anthony Sterling was pouring his morning tea. Sterling was a civil rights attorney with a reputation for being a wolf in a three-piece suit. He handled the cases other lawyers were too scared to touch. He heard the sirens. He walked to the balcony. He looked down and saw the commotion at the daily grind. He saw the way the officers were dragging a man out of the shop, a man who was limping heavily, one foot dragging at an unnatural angle. Sterling squinted. He saw the officers toss a black cane into the trunk of the cruiser. He saw the man being shoved into the back seat. He didn't know Marcus Holloway, but he knew the look of a civil rights violation from 100 yards away. He set his tea down. He picked up his phone and dialed his investigator. "Get down to the daily grind on 4th and Main," Sterling said. "Something bad just happened. Get names, get videos, and find out where they're taking that man." Marcus sat in the holding cell for 7 hours. They had taken his cane. They had taken his shoelaces. They had taken his belt. Without his cane, he couldn't walk to the metal toilet in the corner. He had to crawl. The pain in his back was a throbbing, red-hot creature eating him alive. He sat on the concrete bench, eyes closed, using breathing techniques he had learned in the VA hospital to keep from passing out. He wasn't angry yet. He was in shock. He was analyzing the data. Why? What did I do? Who called? At 4 p.m., the door opened. A sergeant he didn't recognize walked in. He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Holloway," the sergeant said, "you're being released on your own recognizance." "What are the charges?" Marcus asked. His voice was raspy. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, failure to comply." "And the weapon?" Marcus asked sharply. "The gun I was supposed to have?" The sergeant didn't meet his eyes. "There was no weapon recovered. Here are your property bags." Marcus limped out of the precinct into the late afternoon light. It was still raining. He felt dirty. He felt hollowed out. The city he had defended, the city he paid taxes to, had chewed him up and spit him out because he dared to drink coffee while black. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Anthony Sterling leaned over the passenger seat. "Mr. Holloway?" Sterling asked. "My name is Anthony Sterling. I saw what happened from my office. I'm an attorney, and I think you need a ride." Marcus looked at the man. He wanted to say no. He wanted to go home, shower, and hide under his covers for a week. But then he thought about the knee in his back. He thought about Rourke's screaming face. "Yeah," Marcus said, opening the door. "I think I do." The investigation that followed was like peeling back the layers of a rotten onion. Anthony Sterling took the case on contingency. He told Marcus, "We aren't just going to sue for damages. We are going to put the entire department on trial." The first domino to fall was the video. Sarah Jenkins had sent the footage to Sterling's secure portal the same day. When Sterling watched it in his office, he went cold. It was worse than he thought. The clarity of the video showed undeniable proof that Marcus was holding nothing but air when the gun was drawn. It picked up Marcus explaining his disability. It picked up the thud of the knee hitting his spine. Sterling filed a lawsuit in federal court. Holloway v. the City of Riverton, Officer Kyle Rourke et al. The allegations included excessive force, false arrest, malicious prosecution, and violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The city attorney, a man named Miller who was used to making these problems go away with small checks, offered $50,000. Sterling didn't even call Marcus to ask. He sent a one-word email back. No. Then came the discovery phase. This is where the secrets come out. Sterling's team requested the 911 logs. They requested Rourke's personnel file. And they requested the identity of the caller. They found Brenda Miller. It turned out Brenda wasn't just a concerned citizen. She was a weaponized nuisance. The records showed she had called police 43 times in 2 years. She had called on a black delivery driver. She had called on a Latino gardener. She had called on a group of teenagers playing basketball. The police department knew who she was. The dispatch notes even had a flag. Frequent caller, unverified reports. And yet, when she said weapon, they sent a cowboy like Rourke without a second thought. Then came the depositions. This is the moment where the truth is forced into the light. Under oath, with a stenographer typing every stutter, Officer Kyle Rourke sat across the mahogany table from Sterling. Rourke wore a suit that was too tight in the shoulders. He looked annoyed, as if this were a waste of his time. "Officer Rourke," Sterling began, adjusting his glasses. "In your police report, you stated that Mr. Holloway lunged at you. You stated he reached for a metallic object. Is that correct?" "Yes," Rourke said, his jaw tight. "It was a split-second decision. I feared for my life." Sterling pressed a button on his laptop. A large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The video from the coffee shop played. It showed Marcus sitting perfectly still. It showed his hands in the air. It showed the cane 5 feet away. "Officer," Sterling said softly, "the video shows Mr. Holloway's hands were empty and raised for 12 seconds before you grabbed him. Can you explain to me what definition of lunge you were using?" Rourke stayed silent. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. "Did you ask him about his leg?" Sterling continued. "He told you he was an amputee. Did you verify that before you kicked his legs apart?" I thought he was lying." "Suspects lie. So you assumed a disabled veteran was a liar, but you assumed the woman across the street who saw a rifle through closed blinds was telling the gospel truth." Rourke had no answer. The momentum shifted, but the city was stubborn. They prepared for trial. They wanted to argue qualified immunity, the legal shield that protects officers from being sued personally. But then Sarah Jenkins posted the video. She hadn't signed a non-disclosure agreement. She was tired of seeing the city spokesperson lie on the news, calling the arrest justified. She uploaded the full 14-minute clip to Twitter with the caption, "This is what they did to a hero." It went nuclear. By noon, it had 1 million views. By 6 p.m., it was on CNN. The public reaction was visceral. Veterans groups mobilized. The American Legion issued a statement demanding Rourke's badge. Protesters gathered outside the coffee shop, holding signs that read, "Coffee is not a crime," and "Disarm hate." Marcus, who hated attention, found himself the reluctant face of a movement. He gave one press conference, standing with his cane, Sterling by his side. "I fought for this country," Marcus said, his voice quiet but amplified by a dozen microphones. "I lost my leg for this country. I never thought the people I fought for would treat me like an enemy in my own neighborhood." The pressure on the mayor was catastrophic. The city council held an emergency meeting. The police chief, who had initially defended Rourke, suddenly went silent. The settlement offer came back. It wasn't $50,000 anymore. The final negotiations took place in a conference room that smelled of expensive leather and fear. The city wanted it over. They wanted the headlines to stop. "We are authorized to offer $1 million, the city attorney said, looking defeated. Sterling looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the table. $1.2 million, Marcus said. "And I have conditions." "Conditions?" the attorney asked. "Money fixes my roof," Marcus said. "It doesn't fix the department. I want Rourke gone. Fired. Not suspended. Fired. And I want him to surrender his certification so he can't go one town over and be a cop there. We can't control the certification board," the attorney argued. "Then we go to trial," Sterling bluffed, "and I'll put Rourke on the stand in front of a jury of 12 people who have all seen that video." The attorney sighed. "We will recommend decertification. We can agree to termination." "And the caller," Marcus added, "I want the city to pursue charges for filing a false report. She used you as a weapon against me." We can look into that." "Put it in writing," Sterling said. "And one more thing. Mandatory training. Not a PowerPoint. Real training. Interaction with disabled vets. De-escalation. And I want an independent oversight committee to review every use of force complaint for the next 5 years." It took 6 hours of drafting, but they signed the deal. $1.2 million, the largest settlement for a single arrest in the city's history. But the money was just the receipt. The real cost was the change. The aftermath reshaped the city. Officer Kyle Rourke was fired 2 days later. The district attorney, sensing the political winds, charged him with 4th-degree assault and official misconduct. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge to avoid jail time, but his law enforcement career was over. He works in private security now, guarding a warehouse where he can't hurt anyone. Brenda Miller, the caller, faced justice too. The city cited her under a nuisance ordinance. She was fined $2,500, and, in a rare move, the DA charged her with misuse of the 911 system. She pleaded no contest. She sold her apartment and moved to a different state. The neighborhood quieted down. The reforms were real. The Holloway protocol was implemented. Now, when a call comes in about a suspicious person, dispatchers are required to ask specific questions. What is the person doing? Do you see a weapon? Are they threatening anyone? If the answers are vague, officers are dispatched for a welfare check, not a high-risk stop. As for Marcus Holloway, the settlement money allowed him to buy a small house with a garden, far away from apartment buildings with prying eyes. He built a ramp. He set up a high-end server room in the basement. But the trauma lingered. For 6 months, he brewed his own coffee. He couldn't bring himself to walk through those doors. But Marcus was a Marine, and Marines don't retreat forever. One Tuesday in May, 6 months after the incident, Marcus put on his coat. He grabbed his cane, and he walked the 6 blocks. He stopped in front of the daily grind. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He took a deep breath, smelling the rain and the roast. He pushed the door open. The bell jingled. The shop went quiet for a second. Then Chloe, the barista, looked up. Her face broke into a massive, tearful smile. "The usual, Marcus?" she asked. "Yeah," Marcus said, a small smile touching his lips. "Dark roast, black, and I'll take the window seat." He walked to the table. He leaned his cane against the wall. He opened his laptop, and he finally finished his coffee. This story is a victory, but it's a victory that shouldn't have been necessary. Marcus Holloway had to be a perfect victim, a veteran, a calm professional, a man with video evidence, just to get basic justice. It makes you wonder, what happens to the people who aren't perfect? What happens when there is no camera? The Holloway Protocol is saving lives in Riverton today, but there are thousands of cities that haven't learned this lesson yet. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think the settlement was enough? And what would you do if you saw an officer crossing the line? Would you pull out your phone like Sarah did? It's a hard question, but the answer might save a life. If you found value in this story, if you believe that shining a light on these shadows is important, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep the lights on and the stories coming. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe and keep your eyes open.